I, Rahmi Özsan, the president of Making North Cyprus a Better Place to Live, very, very embarrassed, and I feel so sorry for these people who involved with these greedy banks. I'm doing my utmost with my group, and I hope we will achieve our goals, and we will make this island a very happy place for anybody, everybody who would love to live on this island.
There are three things that make any civilized society. One is the rule of law. The second is the right to legally own and hold property. And the third one is the freedom from arbitrary and illegal actions that threaten the first two. Here in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, a few banks are actually attacking all three. And innocent people, both Turkish Cypriots and expatriates, are suffering. Take the case of the notorious Kulaxis 5 site at Karşıyaka. The story starts in 2004, when a man called Abdurrahman Guni started to build houses on the Kulaxis site. Bob and Jan French actually purchased one of the houses on the site. Let's hear what they have to say.
Well, our story really begins in 2004, when Jan and I came over here to Northern Cyprus on holiday. We'd been thinking for some time to move abroad to retire, and while we were here, Jan told me
if I could live anywhere abroad, it would be in Northern Cyprus. It's just a beautiful place.
So eventually we decided, we actually purchased a villa from Abdurrahman Guni, the director of Kulaxis Construction, on what is now known as the Kulaxis 5 site in Karşıyaka. The land was owned by Yüksel Yilmaz. He made an agreement with Abdurrahman Guni, the director of Kulaxis Construction, to have 13 villas built on the land. 3 of those villas were to be given to the landowner in return for the land. The remaining 10 were all sold to expats, including Jan and I, who paid a total of £95,000 for ours. After the villas had been completed, Abdurrahman Guni took out a loan of £40,000 with bank, with the landowner as guarantor.
At an incredible 250% interest rate.
Who in their right mind would take out a loan with such a huge interest rate? He had no chance of paying it back. We also can't understand how the bank agreed to loan him more money when he'd already defaulted on one for £1,600 a few months earlier. We didn't borrow any money from anyone, so why should we have to pay any back? We just want to be able to get on with the rest of our lives living in Northern Cyprus.
And just hope the courts rule in our favour so that we can just live here in peace and stress-free.
Yes.
This unusual second loan was secured against the whole of the land. Surprisingly, it was described on the loan documents only as a bare field. Let's take a look at the side drawing of the land. The houses, colored green, had already been sold and actually had some people living in them. The landowner and loan guarantor Yüksel Yilmaz owned all the houses colored red. His family were living in some of them. All the houses had been completed by the time the loan was taken out. The developer, Abdurrahman Guni, in an affidavit and sworn court testimony, claims he advised the bank's director and surveyor at the time of the loan that he had completed the building of all the houses and that some had people living in them already. In spite of this, the land is declared on the loan document as a tarla or field, or in English, bare land. The bank neglected to advise the government land registry of the houses that had been built and had already been sold. At the best, the bank appeared to have been negligent in failing to check out the true ownership of the title deed and inform land registry. At worst, the bank appears to have deliberately failed to declare to the land registry the fact that houses had already been built and sold on the land, and that people were living in them at the time the loan was granted.
According to Section 21 of Mortgage Law, 1178 in TRNC, when creditors put a mortgage on a property, they are obliged to declare if the property has been rented and if there are any changes on the property. What I believe, this rule of law means that the rights of the other people on the property remain valid and should be respected. Also, a mortgage covers only what is mentioned on the mortgage certificate and may not cover the houses or rights of other people which not mentioned on the certificate. Only when a house is mentioned on the mortgage certificate and the consent of the purchaser is obtained, can the rights of the purchaser be affected. I think this has to be the correct interpretation of mortgage law. Otherwise, there can be a very unfair and unlawful situation for the people who bought a property which was never mentioned on the land mortgage certificate.
The evidence seems clear. When the original documents were filed with the land registry office, the bank knew there were houses on the land. The bank seems also to have ignored other standard banking rules, which states that after reasonable time of non-payment of installments, it should have declared the 40,000 loan a bad debt and started immediate recovery. The bank could have done this by selling the one vacant house owned by the guarantor worth about 80,000 sterling. If this happened, the bank would have recovered its 40,000 sterling loan, including interest, within 3 months. But it appears the bank had other plans. The bank definitely made a mistake. Why the innocent people have to compensate the negligence of the bank?
The unlucky homeowners knew nothing of this. Meanwhile, behind their back, the bank is ratcheting up the interest charges on the developer's original £40,000 loan, so now they're claiming a whopping £960,000. Unsurprisingly, the builder who took the £40,000 loan and the man who guaranteed the bank loan have long fled to Turkey. The bank now wants its money. Astonishingly, instead of pursuing the builder who took out the original £40,000 loan or the person who guaranteed the loan, the bank is now pursuing the homeowners on the site for its money. The homeowners are being asked to pay for their houses twice. The bank now claims it owns everything on the site, land, houses, the lot. Now it wants the homeowners to pay them the extortionate amount of interest that they're claiming. The bank is now claiming that they are liable for the £960,000 and it wants its money. Yet not one of the homeowners on the site has borrowed 1 penny. The bank has made the situation even worse by threatening to sell off the houses over the owners' heads or even evict them from their own houses.
We've been to hell and back with this lot, having had evictions posted on us, and to think that you're going to lose your house at this stage of our lives is frightening.
The sad thing is that we are still, even now, at this stage, being threatened with eviction. And the evictions seem to be now a very real thing. It could easily happen, as far as we know. In 1957, I was flying Canberras out of RAF Kateri. And it was at that time, in 1958, that Phil and I got married there.
After we had signed the contract, we found out that the builder had taken out a loan for £40,000.
In actual fact, it said in the contract that there was no mortgage and there never would be.
That's right.
Didn't it?
Yes, it did.
So it was a complete surprise. As opposed to peace and quiet, we have gone through a very difficult time over the last 2 or 3 years. In fact, we've been to hell and back.
And now we're in danger of losing our homes. And this is frightening because, quite honestly, if we lost our home, we'd have nowhere else to go.
I just hope that soon, before long, somebody will be brave enough to take action against these people to make sure it never happens again.
Our lives have been completely ruined with this business. We are not young, and we would like to have peace and quiet in our houses. In fact, we're quite ancient, and we would love to have at least a few years of peace together to enjoy our lives here in Kyrenia, which we've always loved. My husband won this DFC in a campaign in Kenya, and I'm very, very proud of him. And when you think about this, and this award makes you wonder how we've come to this, where we come to Cyprus and we are treated in this, the way that we have been treated with our houses here. We came here to Kyrenia to live our lives out, to finish our lives here. We love this place, and I hope that when this is all over, we can live in peace once again.
The TRNC's official response to the homeowners' plight has been weak, to say the least.
Despite the fact that the Prime Minister has said he wants to stop eviction of K5 householders, and the Finance Minister has stated that the bank has no right to the houses, the bank is still demanding its money or the properties and telling the homeowners to pay up or get out. TRNC founding President Rauf Denktash followed this case closely. Before his recent death and suspecting fraud, he wrote to the Attorney General calling for an official investigation. Despite this, and despite the law, when the case last went to the court, the local judge ruled that the bank was entitled to its money from the householders. The fact that the bank's highly unusual deal with the developer was done without the knowledge of the homeowners apparently counted for nothing.
The public auction that followed descended into ugly scenes, and the police were called. Ex-President Denktash himself turned up at the scene and denounced the procedures as totally illegal and a disgrace to the good name of Northern Cyprus.
Despite high-level pressure from both senior politicians and the local press, the bank still resolutely refuses to back down in its claim to repossess the properties or get money from the helpless homeowners. The bank has embarked on a long campaign of intimidation and harassment to grab money from the homeowners or dispossess them or their legally bought properties. Since then, the bank has organized break-ins to 2 of the unoccupied houses without a warrant, changed the locks without the owner's consent, and moved trusted bank agents into the houses. Homeowners who photographed the event were even warned off by the police. The bank has even gone so far as to get Küptek, the local government-controlled electricity supplier, to cut off electricity to the homeowners despite their bills being paid. The Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, the Attorney General's office, and the main opposition leaders have all agreed with the group's legal advisors that the repossessions due to these stealth mortgages are illegal and the courts should say so. Despite all this, the TRNC courts have been slow to find for the homeowners and so far have found for the bank.
These flawed legal procedures continue, with yet another appeal in the near future to call for a suspension of the eviction orders and the house sales of the homeowners.
Sadly, the Kulaksız 5 case is just the tip of the stealth mortgage and property scam iceberg in the Turkish Republic of North Cyprus. Some house buyers are not yet aware of this threat to their homes. There are many other cases of banks and builders in the TRNC threatening both Cypriots and expatriates, homebuyers alike. One of the tragedies of this case is that the court's flawed interpretation of the law is, according to informed legal sources, easily remedied by simple amendments to the existing law. We are awaiting the government to quickly enact these amendments. When this happens, all can sleep soundly.
The case has even reached Westminster, where Lord McGuinness, who sits in the House of Lords and whose family has a holiday home in Cyprus, has taken up the case.
Well, this is the tip of the iceberg. That's the unfortunate thing about the Kulaksız 5. There has been so much unlawful activity by the banks and by the developers, in collusion, one with the other, to take the ground on which the houses have been built and to value it, to give the developer a loan at an exorbitant rate of interest, so that now the banks are able to put an extra £1 million on their balance sheets. That's unlawful, that's deceitful. That is, in fact, banks behaving badly. And while I know from having talked to members of government here in Lefkosia, the reality is they would like to do something, but where do they start? They've got to start with the banks, making the banks responsible, and when these matters come before the courts, then all the evidence has got to be produced, not just evidence which suits the banks. And that's a problem, particularly, although it's not exclusively a problem with British residents here in Northern Cyprus. There are Turkish Cypriots who have exactly the same problems. They cannot get the deeds of their house because of twisted arrangements that have been made.
This case has, unsurprisingly, attracted a great deal of publicity. Already dark theories of conspiracy and corruption are circulating, and the main opposition party here in North Cyprus has denounced the whole business in no uncertain terms. The homeowners are presently appealing the lower court's ruling. However, if the appeal court should rule against the homeowners, then that could become politically very embarrassing for Turkish North Cyprus. It could also be very embarrassing for Turkey, because Turkey takes responsibility for human rights in the TRNC.